Hey there friends, David here with the aforepromised Bloodraven, Leaf, Ghost of High Heart video that I teased at the end of the Bloodraven Before the Wall video that came out a couple days ago. Thanks everyone for watching. Do check that one out if you haven't already, as that covers everything that we know that Bloodraven did before going to the wall and joining the Night's Watch. And in this video, we'll talk about what he might have done before joining the Night's Watch. So we will trace out the long-running agenda of the old gods of the weirwood to meddle in the bloodline of House Targaryen, which runs all the way from the time of Bloodraven down into the present. And this will also double as my official Ghost of High Heart video. So thanks very much for clicking on my video, and don't forget to hit that thumbs up button while the intro music plays. All right, let's talk the Ghost of High Heart as I relight my stubby little candles. So there's two main ideas here that we're going to talk about. One, did Bloodraven eat weirwood paste before going to the wall, either under the purview of the Ghost of the High Heart or perhaps Leaf, Child of the Forest? And the second idea, did Bloodraven sire the Ghost of High Heart on Leaf, Child of the Forest? Did Bloodraven shag an elf? Don't laugh. I mean, you can laugh, but it's a serious theory. There's more evidence here than you might think. So just hang tight and we'll get to it. So now, first of all, when we talk about Bloodraven maybe eating weirwood paste before going to the wall, it's important to recognize that green seers aren't necessarily strapped down to weirwood thrones all the time. The Bloodraven that we meet in A Dance with Dragons is only strapped down to the throne because he's 125 years old and his lifespan is being extended by the weirwood tree. Bran, however, sits on his weirwood throne, is fed the weirwood paste, has his series of visions where he's looking out through the eyes of the heart tree, so he's wed the trees, but then they pick him up and take him back to his sleeping quarters where he falls asleep and actually has another series of weirwood dreams, seeing through the eyes of the Winterfell heart tree as he's sleeping and no longer sitting on the throne. Ergo, green seers don't have to always be strapped down to the weird thrones, and Bran probably isn't going to be in Bloodraven's cave for the rest of the story. So Bloodraven is actually the exception, and normally a green seer can wed the trees and then still go walking and talking while remaining somewhat connected to the weirwood net. Because again, Bran has weirwood net visions even when he's not on the throne. So this is what Bloodraven would have been doing, essentially cruising around using the weirwood net to spy on people after having eaten some weirwood paste in a cave in the Riverlands somewhere, perhaps given to him again by either the Ghost of High Heart or Leaf, Child of the Forest. This may also be what the Ghost of High Heart is doing now. Of course, we don't know if she's a full green seer or perhaps just a green dreamer like Jojen, but she's obviously somewhere on that weirwood spectrum, if you will, as she walks around the weirwood stumps of the High Heart and receives weirwood visions of things going on all around the world with essentially perfect accuracy, albeit coded in symbolism. So for example, she perceived that Euron was the one behind the faceless man who killed Balon Greyjoy. And when she saw the Red Wedding before it happened, she even heard the sounds of the cacophonous music and the sad little sound of Jingle Bells Bells. So she may have a weirwood cave somewhere near the High Heart, perhaps right under the High Heart, and it may be connected to the same cave system that Beric and the Brotherhood Without Banners hang out in. Obviously, their cave is shot through with weirwood roots, and I do think that could be literally under the High Heart, but we really don't know. There's probably weirwood caves all throughout the Riverlands, and all throughout Westeros, to be honest. But the point is, if the Ghost of High Heart is not trying to extend her lifespan past its normal span of years, then there's no reason for her to be strapped down to a weirwood throne like Bloodraven just yet. Now, as to what actually is the Ghost of High Heart, most people think that she's some kind of Child of the Forest human hybrid, potentially a first-generation hybrid. Jenny of Oldstones basically just flat out claims that she is a Child of the Forest, but she really seems more like a hybrid. Arya spied the small pale shape creeping behind the horses, thin white hair flying wild as she leaned upon a gnarled cane. The woman could not have been more than 3 feet tall. The firelight made her eyes gleam as red as the eyes of Jon's wolf. He was a ghost too. Arya stole closer and knelt to watch. Then a moment later, we get similar language where it says, the dwarf woman sat down uninvited by the fire. She squinted at them with eyes like hot coals. So that's the same description as Bloodraven's eye, the last coal in a dying fire. And to be clear, it is not just the reflected firelight that is making the Ghost of Highheart's eyes appear red, because when she turns to Arya, it says, "The dwarf woman studied her with dim red eyes." So not only is Bloodraven's natural eye color red, we are told that among the children of the forest, those with the green seer gifts have eyes as green as moss or as red as blood. And that's instead of the usual golden eyes of the children of the forest. They're presumably all cat-shaped, but the green seers have eyes that are red or green. The Ghost of Highheart is also the same height as a child of the forest, 3 feet tall, and that's why I tend to think that she might be a first-generation hybrid. The way to tell, of course, is by looking at the hands. The children of the forest have those 4-fingered, black-clawed hands, and the Ghost of Highheart's hand is briefly described as wrinkled, but I don't know if anyone stopped to count the fingers. So, as for the timeline, well, she's obviously very old in 300 AC or so when Arya and the Brotherhood meet her atop the Highheart, but when she came to court with Jenny of Oldstones in like 239 or 240 AC, she's only described as a dwarf woman, not an old dwarf woman. So she might not have been old yet, and even though Bloodraven was sent to the wall in 233 AC, so 6 or 7 years before the Ghost of Highheart comes to court in King's Landing, the ghost was already known to Jenny of Oldstones very well by that time, which means she's been hanging out in the Riverlands for a while, and thus there is some overlap, and it is possible that Bloodraven could have run into the Ghost of Highheart before going to the wall. So just as Jojen and Bran both received psychic green dreams that called them and guided them to Bloodraven's cave north of the wall, perhaps Bloodraven started having weirwood dreams that called him, again, to some cave in the Riverlands. Bran actually starts having tree dreams, quote unquote, in Winterfell before he ever gets to the cave. And similarly, Raventree Hall famously has a giant weirwood tree. Raventree Hall is also fairly close to the Highheart and very, very close to Oldstones. So if Bloodraven did have dreams calling him to a cave somewhere to eat some weirwood paste, they could have been sent by the Ghost of Highheart. Again, we don't know the full extent of her weirwood powers, but Bloodraven now can send dreams, so Ghost of Highheart may have been able to send Bloodraven a dream. And although we don't know if there was a previous three-eyed crow up in the cave before Bloodraven, that's certainly possible, so that's someone else that could have sent Bloodraven a dream, sending him to a cave in the Riverlands where the Ghost of Highheart or Leaf could have been waiting for him with a nice hot bowl of weirwood paste. So think about it this way, and this is actually the thought I was developing in the Danny Blackwood video that caused me to write this Bloodraven script. There is a pretty consistent old gods involvement with the affairs of House Targaryen and the bloodline that leads to the prince that was promised that stretches back many, many decades. So first we have the Ghost of Highheart showing up at King's Landing in 239 AC after a Targaryen prince fell in love with and married her sweet Jenny of Oldstones, to whom she is either related or just very close to. And famously, while at court, the Ghost of Highheart prophesied that the prince that was promised would be eventually born from the line of Aerys and Rhaella, which is the entire reason that Jaehaerys II forced Aerys and Rhaella to marry, even though they never got along well. The Ghost of Highheart was at Summerhall in 259 AC and at court all through Egg's reign, so it's very likely that she was consulting with Egg to some extent, while he was trying to find various ways to hatch dragons. The Ghost of Highheart was actually thought to have died at Summerhall, but obviously she didn't, so she must have managed to escape unseen somehow. Rhaegar, of course, was born at Summerhall as the flames consumed it, and when Rhaegar got older, we know that he had a habit of chilling with the Ghost of Highheart in the ruins of Summerhall, and that's where he composed Jenny's song that Tom O'Sevens still sings to her when the Brotherhood comes calling. It seems very likely that the Ghost of Highheart and Rhaegar would have been talking about the prince that was promised and prophecy, since both Rhaegar and the Ghost of Highheart are very, very concerned with helping the prince that was promised get born. Then we come to the tourney of Harrenhal in 281 AC, where we have Howland Reed visiting the Isle of Faces for the entire winter leading up to the tourney. And apparently he left the Isle of Faces and ran right into the tourney of Harrenhal. And then, sometime shortly after Rhaegar and Lyanna absconded near Harrenhal after the tourney, they show up on the Isle of Faces, according to this canon calendar art by Justin Sweet, as I always say. And so obviously those two visits are connected, and it's likely that Howland Reed, who was, involved with Lyanna and the Starks at the tourney. He's probably the one who told Rhaegar and Lyanna to go to the Isle of Faces in the first place. He gave them an invite from the Green Men, seemingly. I actually made a video to talk about all of this because it's, pretty interesting. And that one is called R+L=J, Secret Wedding. Now, in that video, I speculated that if the ghost of Highheart and Rhaegar were hanging out at Summerhall, and if the ghost of Highheart is obviously close to the old gods and a part Children of the Forest hybrid, then it would make a lot of sense to suppose that the ghost of Highheart also may have been on the Isle of Faces with Rhaegar and Lyanna, and Howland Reed, and Arthur Dayne. It was a whole party. In other words, if the ghost of Highheart or Leaf Child of the Forest, acting as agents of the old gods, did feed Bloodraven some weirwood paste in a cave in the Riverlands before he went to the Wall, well, that would just fit right in with this long-running agenda of the Green Seers and the old gods to steer the bloodline of House Targaryen towards the prince that was promised. And it would effectively extend it back several more decades. In fact, steering the Targaryen bloodline towards the prince that was promised is exactly what everyone thinks Bloodraven has been doing for years and years. Man, it's almost like the ghost of Highheart and Rhaegar and Bloodraven have all been working to enact the same agenda over the course of 6 decades or more. It's almost like Bloodraven himself, a Targaryen Greenseer, is like a key fulcrum of this entire thing or something. Now, I'm not saying that a Green Dream sent Missy Blackwood to King's Landing to seduce Aegon the Unworthy to make a Bloodraven. I'm just saying, if you're the Child of the Forest and you're looking to get a Targaryen to knock up somebody with Greenseer blood, Aegon the Unworthy is kind of an easy mark. That's all I'm saying. And mostly as a punchline, mostly as a Missy Blackwood, Greenseer honeypot trap for House Targaryen. No, probably not. But we do have to speak seriously about Leaf, Child of the Forest. As we read earlier, Leaf was born in the time of the dragon, which just means after Aegon's conquest. And she says she went walking in the realms of men for some 200 years to watch and listen and learn. That means Leaf was definitely walking around Westeros during most of, if not all of, Bloodraven's life before going to the Wall. So what could Leaf have been doing besides watching and learning and listening to people? Well, perhaps she was working towards the same agenda that the old gods are clearly working on from the time of the Ghost of Highheart on. And if you were to make a list of all the people that Leaf might have had contact with while she was walking around and rank them, I think Bloodraven would be first, right? So perhaps Leaf is the one who served Bloodraven up some weirwood paste. And it's also possible that Leaf is the one who initiated the Ghost of Highheart, if she is a Greenseer, and she had to eat weirwood paste. Maybe it was Leaf that gave it to her. I mean, this is the sort of thing that the Children of the Forest might send one of their own out into the world to do, to initiate those rare human beings or Children of the Forest hybrids who have the gift of the green sight. And then the final thought is, what if this is all a family affair? The Ghost of the Highheart might have red eyes simply because she is part Child of the Forest and a Green Dreamer or Green Seer, but she obviously could have gotten them from Bloodraven too. I mean, she looks exactly like the result of a Brynden Rivers Child of the Forest love tryst. So maybe that's what she is. The timeline actually works great. Bloodraven was born in 175 AC and could have had elf sex with Leaf sometime in his 20s or 30s and still have the Ghost of Highheart be like 100 years old or so when Arya meets her. And that would put the ghost at about 40 or so when she came to court with Jenny of Oldstone. So yeah, all that works out just fine. So we already read this quote, but take a listen again to Leaf talking about Bloodraven in near Jesus-like terms and see if this doesn't sound a bit like someone with a very deep love and sense of admiration for Bloodraven. "Most of him has gone into the tree," explained the singer Mira called Leaf. "He has lived beyond his mortal span, and yet he lingers. For us, for you, for the realms of men. Only a little strength remains in his flesh. He has 1,000 eyes and one, but there is much to watch. One day you will know." So yeah, maybe that is Bloodraven's girlfriend talking about him like that. And Leaf also, if you remember, talked about turning for home when her heart became weary. So maybe her heart is, heavy because she hasn't been around her kind in a long time. Or perhaps it's weary because, her human wizard boyfriend just left to join the Night's Watch. So maybe she dipped out and went north when Bloodraven did, or shortly after. And maybe that's why Bloodraven went missing in the woods. Maybe he saw his old elf girlfriend in the haunted forest and was like, wait. And maybe it's like an echo of Night's King seeing Night's Queen north of the Wall. And, well, let's not spiral out into symbolic parallels. We've got to end this video, but let's briefly ask the question, why would Leaf or Bloodraven do this thing? Well, perhaps it was simply something that fate needed to happen. Maybe the ghost of Highheart just needed to exist, you know, to give her useful prophecies. Or maybe it's just because Brendan is open-minded and curious about elf sex, curious about elf sex. Or maybe the agenda was just to mix as much Greenseer and dragon blood as possible and just kind of see what happens. Bloodraven is a Targaryen Greenseer First Man Blood hybrid. Egg marries Black Betha Blackwood, and that's why Dany and Rhaegar are half Blackwood, and I'm making a video about it next week. And then Jon Snow, of course. He is a mix of Stark and Targaryen. So maybe this really was all an effort to find the right mix of bloodlines to make the prince that was promised. Or maybe George Martin just thinks it's really cool to mix Greenseer potent First Man blood and Targaryen blood, but it's happening a lot, as you can see. And so let me know what you think. Is the ghost of Highheart Brynden Rivers' love child? Is it Melisandre? And if so, who is Melisandre's mother? All this fun stuff you can talk about in the comments. And if you want to join our Discord, which, by the way, you don't need age verification for, because we have a private Discord and no age-gated activities. So you may have heard about that. You don't have to get your face scanned to join our Discord. All you need to do is either sign up for Patreon or click on the join button below to be a YouTube channel member, and we will give you an invite to our happy little Discord server where we talk about all this kind of stuff, which I don't know if you've noticed, Reddit and Twitter, and it's kind of a mess out there. But thanks very much for watching my videos, as always, and that's it. I'm gonna blow out the candles now.